Welcome to the Apprenticeship in Customer Service at Level 3. In this video I'm going to go through the structure of the qualification, who it's for, and we'll talk through the learner journey so you'll get a bit of an understanding of what to expect when you're completing this. So first of all, what is an apprenticeship? Apprenticeship offers those over 16 paid employment with the opportunity to train for jobs at various levels. Traditionally, apprenticeships were for learners coming from some form of education, such as school or college, to enter the workforce and complete a job that they hadn't done before. However, apprenticeships have been reformed, and it's now very common to see learners who have more experience in the workplace. However, they will still be changing role to some degree or gaining additional responsibilities. Doesn't really matter what your background is. The main thing is that you are working on a job which is new and you're looking to gain in your competency, and the apprenticeship is a structured path to help you with that. So at the start of the programme, learners are typically not all that competent at the KSBs in the programme, but by the end of it they've learned and they've completed assessments, and so they've produced this portfolio of evidence that proves that they are competent at performing these knowledge, skills and behaviours in the workplace. Apprenticeship standards are developed with stakeholders from industry and training. So this means that education providers have got together with leading employers to create a list of competencies which you would expect someone working in customer service to be able to perform. And that's been produced into this standard, and that's what you're going to be producing all of your evidence, your portfolio around. And when it comes to endpoint assessments, you'll be completing your endpoint assessments around these knowledge, skills and behaviours. And it's for that reason that this is a vocational or competency-based qualification. So that simply means it's about you showing that you're able to perform these skills in the workplace. It's a bit of a comparison if we look at education such as college, school or university. Typically, these sorts of qualifications would involve attending a class or reading a book, learning some theory or some knowledge, sitting an exam or writing an essay to show that you have that knowledge and understanding. Whereas with this apprenticeship, it's more about your performance, it's more about you being able to actually perform that skill in the workplace rather than just know about it. So the main purpose of a customer service specialist is to be a professional for direct customer support within all sectors and organisation types. So you're usually very much a customer facing person, and you'll often be dealing with complex or sometimes technical customer requests, complaints and queries. Communication is key to this sort of role, as is using various IT technologies. And so that in essence is what this customer service qualification is all about. It's about being able to use these tools and skills effectively. So what will you get out of this apprenticeship? You'll receive a level 3 apprenticeship in customer service, and that will be your main goal that you'll be working towards. But you'll also gain eligibility to join the Institute of Customer Service as an individual member at professional level. So there is some accreditation by a professional body. You'll also receive your functional skills at level 2 in maths and English. And you'll also create a portfolio of evidence that demonstrates your competence in your role. In terms of progression, once you've completed this apprenticeship, you'll be able to progress on to a career within your industry, so in customer service. You may also look to specialise in a particular role, so you may have a particular area within your business that you would like to gain experience, so it's actually possible to progress in terms of specialising. You may want to progress by looking to complete an additional qualification, so you could look at a higher level qualification, perhaps a level 4 apprenticeship or a degree apprenticeship. You could potentially look at completing a business related undergraduate degree. Apprenticeships are accepted at a number of universities for their entry requirements. Or you could look to complete a business related professional qualification. So for example, a diploma in customer service, or if you're becoming a team leader or manager, a diploma in management. So if we look at the qualifications framework, you'll see that this is a level 3 apprenticeship. So it sits on the column to the right hand side here. level 3 apprenticeship, and that is equivalent to an A-level or national diploma. It's important to note that this framework doesn't show credit values. Credit values are the number of hours expected that is expected to take for a learner to achieve the qualification. So some qualification may be at the same level, but others might be larger than others. This is just showing which level the qualification sits at on the framework in terms of difficulty. So the standard consists of a list of knowledge, skills and behaviours which by the end of this apprenticeship you'll be expected to be able to demonstrate. And this gives you an idea of what the training for this apprenticeship will look like and what the assessments will look like. So you'll receive both training and then you'll complete assessments on all of these KSBs. So things such as your knowledge of the customer journey, understanding customer needs, working with your customers, working as part of a team. There's also there's also behaviours in here, such as developing yourself or taking ownership and responsibility. So there's a lot of different things in here, and these are the things that you'll learn about and that you will. So now we'll look at the standard, or the KSBs. This is the list of knowledge, skills and behaviours which you will be learning about first of all, and then you'll be assessed against. So this will give you an idea of what to expect when it comes to the content of this apprenticeship. So beyond things such as your knowledge of the customer journey, providing a positive experience to your customers and improving service. There's also a number of behaviours in here such as developing yourself and ownership and responsibility, which is essential when you're performing and you're working in a customer service role. So the apprenticeship should last about 18 to 24 months. Some learners will complete this apprenticeship quicker and others will take a little bit longer. In terms of extending beyond the 24-month mark, it can be done if there's a good reason to do so, although most learners will complete within that 18 to 24-month time frame. The apprenticeship is split into 3 phases. The first phase is the on-programme phase. Sometimes this phase is referred to the learning and assessment stage, because during that stage you'll be completing learning activities and assessment activities. You'll then move on to Gateway, and Gateway is essentially a check to ensure that you're ready to move on to your endpoint assessment. And endpoint assessment is where your competency is actually determined. So you complete a number of assessments in this stage, and that is what counts towards your overall grade for this apprenticeship. During the on-programme and Gateway stage, you'll have an assessor, or you'll have a skills coach, depending on the terminology used, to assist you through the qualification. However, at the endpoint assessment stage, you'll be allocated an independent endpoint assessor, so it'll be someone else who hasn't got a prior relationship with you, they won't know you, to complete those assessments at the EPA stage. So let's start with the first stage, on programme, and you'll start with learning. So the apprenticeship journey is, first of all, you come on, you're doing a new job, something you haven't really done before, or additional responsibilities that are new to you. So first of all, you have to learn how to do that, and then you can be assessed to show your competence. This stage will start by producing, with your assessor, an individual learning and assessment plan. So this is essentially a tailored plan of learning activities that you can complete to improve your competence, and then assessments that you can complete. And by assessments at the on-programme stage, that means putting together your portfolio of evidence. So that's evidence that shows you've been able to perform these skills in the workplace. Every learner is different and every role is different. If you think about the customer service role within different organisations, it can often be different, with people being responsible for different things. Even within your organisation, you may be aware of different teams who have vastly different responsibilities, but still within customer service. So it's important that we tailor this qualification and the delivery of it to each learner and to each role, and that's the importance of the individual learning and assessment plan. Some of the training might be standard, so you may have workshops, classes, or online modules to complete, which is standard for customer service, but there'll also be that workplace training planned out that's specific to your role. It is a requirement that as a learner on an apprenticeship that you complete 20% of your time to off-the-job training. And so off-the-job training would be any sort of training activity that isn't part of your regular job, but it should be training that does help your regular job. And it's not necessarily time which is spent working on your apprenticeship or in a class. It can be time spent doing training activities in the workplace, so for example shadowing a colleague. The off-the-job training is recorded in your journal, and your journal is essentially a log of that training that's taken place to show that you have improved your competence over time. Once you've learned how to perform these tasks in the workplace, you'll then complete assessments. So during the on-programme phase, learners will produce a portfolio of evidence which demonstrates their competency at performing the KSBs in the workplace. And that should be in a number of different contexts and over a period of time. Also, for the on-programme assessment, you'll be looking to achieve your Level 2 qualification in English and Maths, so that's Level 2 functional skills in English and Maths. If you already have this qualification, it can be assessed by recognised prior learning. If you've not achieved this qualification before starting the programme, then your assessor will guide you through the learning activities and the assessments for those. Once that's completed, you can then move on to the Endpoint Assessment Gateway. This is essentially an evaluation and a discussion with the apprentice, with the assessor, and with a mentor, so a representative from the employer. And typically, the representative from the employer takes a leading role. And the overall goal for the Endpoint Assessment Gateway is to ensure that the learner is ready to go into that final endpoint assessment. As a prerequisite, a minimum of 12 months must be spent on programme before you can pass through Gateway, and you also must have achieved the requirements of Gateway. So for this qualification, you must have completed your portfolio of evidence, and you must have covered all of your KSBs. You must also have completed your functional skills in Maths and English at Level 2, and you should also have completed a mock endpoint assessment. So during the Gateway stage, your assessor will work with you to complete a mock endpoint assessment, and that can be very, very useful for making you feel that bit more comfortable about completing your endpoint assessment, as you'll know what to expect. If you're ready to move on to endpoint assessment, you can then move on to that stage, and it's at this point an independent endpoint assessor will be assigned to you to complete these assessments. The maximum duration for the endpoint assessment for this qualification is 3 months. And there's 3 endpoint assessments to complete. So the first one is a practical observation with a question and answer. So the observation will last an hour, and it can include an additional 10% at the independent endpoint assessor's discretion. During the observation, you'll be observed in the workplace undertaking a range of day-to-day working activities which can demonstrate your knowledge, skills and behaviours outlined in the standard. The observation must include open questioning to clarify your knowledge and understanding being applied. So this is where the independent endpoint assessor can ask you, what is it you're doing, why are you doing that, how does this fit into your role, and what happens next. The amount of questioning time carried out during the observation shouldn't exceed 15% of the total time allowed for the practical observation. And during the practical observation, the apprentice should have the opportunity, if required, to move from one area or function of the business to another. So the observation, it should take place in your workplace, and the observation should also reflect typical working conditions, and it should also allow you to demonstrate all aspects of the standard that's being assessed. And it should be a holistic overall approach and carried out on a one-to-one basis, and you'll be given 2 weeks notice of the date for that as well. The next assessment during the EPA stage is the work-based project supported by an interview. So this work-based project, you'll complete the project, and then you'll produce a written report based around that, and then you'll be interviewed in relation to the report that you've written up. The word count for the report is approximately 2,500 words, plus or minus 10%, and that word count doesn't include any annexes. Within the annexes, you can include supporting evidence. The deadline for this would be agreed with your independent endpoint assessor, but it should be taking place after Gateway, and it should take place over a 2-month period. The written report has to be submitted 2 weeks prior to the interview date. The subject of the report should be agreed with your independent endpoint assessor with guidance from your employer, and that's important to ensure that the subject and the scope of the project is relevant to your workplace and relevant to the KSBs. But it should cover a specific high-level challenge such as a complaint or a difficult situation that you've dealt with, and you can use this as a bit of a case study to explain what the situation was, what went wrong, what actions you took, what tools you used, and how you corrected or solved the situation. And you could also outline any feedback or lessons that you've learned from it. It's recommended that this is actually the first assessment that you take during the endpoint assessment. So now looking at this as technically the same assessment, but we're now going to talk about the interview that's around that project. So the interview will last 60 minutes, plus or minus 10%. It will focus on the written project and any supporting annexes, so that interview will focus on the report that you've produced. It can take place face-to-face or online, and it will consist of competency-based questions. During this interview, you'll be asked 10 questions. There is leeway for the independent endpoint assessor to ask follow-up questions for clarification. And the independent assessor should grade the work-based project and the interview holistically, so it's both are taken on board when it comes to giving you a grade for this assessment. A representative from your employer's organisation may also be present, so you can have your mentor, your manager there if you wish. And the third and final assessment for the endpoint assessment is a professional discussion supported by your portfolio of evidence. So this is how the portfolio of evidence fits into the apprenticeship and your overall grade. So on programme, you put this portfolio together. At endpoint, you then have a discussion with your independent endpoint assessor around that evidence. So the discussion will last for 60 minutes, plus or minus 10%. During the professional discussion, evidence from that portfolio is used as the base to support the professional discussion. So they'll be asking you questions about evidence that you've produced. It may be to expand on the evidence. They may ask why you've completed a certain task a certain way, how often you've done it, and it's just for you to run through and annotate and explain out your thought process and your decision making around the evidence you produced. You should submit a minimum of 10 pieces of evidence and a maximum of 15 pieces of evidence related to the standards which apply to professional discussion. So it's not necessarily looking at all of the KSBs. The specific KSBs outlined can be seen in the endpoint assessment strategy document. Your portfolio will most likely consist of more than 15 pieces of evidence, so you're looking to select a showcase or the best 10 to 15 pieces of evidence to bring to the discussion. Types of evidence can include witness statements, customer feedback such as emails, letters, or feedback from your manager or mentor. It's not the portfolio that's assessed directly, so it's not the actual files that's part of the evidence that's assessed, it's your performance in the discussion and being able to talk about your evidence that is assessed. The portfolio of evidence should be submitted 2 weeks prior to the discussion, and a discussion can either be face-to-face or online. Once you've completed these 3 assessments, you'll then be given a grade, and these are the 3 possible grades. You can have a pass or you can have a distinction. So if you do particularly well in your endpoint assessment, that is recognised with the distinction grade. And to see what you'd need to get that distinction grade, that can be viewed in detail in the endpoint assessment guide. It could be helpful to look at the learner journey in this format, where it's a bit of a map, and there's a good way of summarising the content we went through today. So you'd start off by creating a plan, so that there you're creating your individual training and assessment plan. Once that's been made, you then follow through with it by completing workplace training and your functional skills training. This training is all logged within your journal to record your off-the-job hours. Once you've completed the workplace training and you're competent at performing that task in the workplace, you can then complete an assessment by gathering evidence for your portfolio of evidence that shows you're competent at performing that skill. Once your portfolio is complete, you can move on to Gateway. At Gateway, your assessor, your employer, and you as the learner will have a discussion to ensure that you're ready and confident to move on to the endpoint assessment stage. Also check that your portfolio is complete, that you have your functional skills in maths and English at level 2, and you'll also complete a mock endpoint assessment to prepare you for the EPA stage. You can then move on to the EPA stage, where you'll be allocated an independent endpoint assessor, and you'll then complete those 3 assessments to be graded. So hopefully that has outlined the purpose behind this qualification, what's assessed, and gives you a good understanding of the learner journey.